What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Web3 SQL Weekly number 3, where I break down queries into bite-sized bits. This week, we're going to be covering how to get NFT balances, specifically ERC721s, and looking at how much they were paid for and whether they were airdropped, minted, or bought. As always, there's going to be a written version of this video linked in the description below, so be sure to read that and stay subscribed so you can learn more tips and tricks. Let's get into it. So this week's question is listed here in the candy board. Reminder that you can go to this link and submit or vote on questions for next week. So here we can see we have some query where we are putting in a wallet saying we want Ethereum's chain, and we're getting all of these different NFTs, the value that they were acquired for, how they were acquired. In this case, I filtered for just bought, token ID, contract address, when it was acquired, transaction hash of acquisition. So before we can get into the query, you have to understand what an ERC721 token is. So if you just go to Etherscan, in this case, I just typed in Azuki. You can see here, there's some total supply. So there's 10,000 Azuki tokens. It's about 5,000 holders, certain number of transfers. The best way to understand these token standards, I think, is still just go to Open Zeppelin, and they'll explain here these are the functions of ERC721 contracts, and these are the events, right? It's fairly similar to an ERC20 token in terms of you still have approvals to then do transfers, except instead of amount transfer, you have a token ID, right? Every single token on an NFT contract gets its own unique ID. That's why it's non-fungible, because each ID only occurs once. If it occurs multiple times, that's an ERC 1155 contract, which I'm not going to go into today. If you want to play around with the different implementations of ERC721s, go to Open Zeppelin's wizard, and you can see here, oh, okay, this is the actual contract, like Solidity code for an ERC721. And if I want to add like Mintable or like voting or a pausable contract, you can click through these to really explore all the variations. This is the same thing that we saw done on like Zora, Foundation, OpenSea with their like shared storefronts where artists create NFTs just all on the same contract. This has evolved with like Foundation has a collection factory, so artists can own their own collections now. But for the most part, you have to keep in mind, okay, just because contract address has a certain number of token IDs, that doesn't mean that it all represents one collection. There's a lot of different ways for metadata to actually be connected. So that's something you want to look into when you're trying to analyze a specific NFT collection. But that is enough for us to get started with today. Now, the main event you're going to have to know is this transfer event, where there's transfer from some address to some address of some token ID. And that's going to be represented inside the NFT transfers table. So let's get into it. First, we need to get all NFT transfers. All right, and I know this is my table because I can search up NFT transfer, and I can see there's token standards, and there's also, let's see, there's also blockchain. All right, so I want to say where blockchain equals, I'm going to do something new this time. I'm going to say chain, and token standard equals ERC720. For chain, I'm going to do list, and I'm just going to copy from here. Say defaults Ethereum, right? So this is going to give me all Ethereum transfers of ERC721 tokens. And I can see here, maybe there's like a from of who the token was transferred from, who received it, the ID of the token, and the contract address. The first step we need to do is we actually need to get the last transfer of every token. So we can do that by using row number. And so what row number does is, let me just find, this article is linked in the newsletter, but row number is one of the window functions that essentially allows you to start a count based on some ordering and a partition. In this case here, in this article, they're ordering by power descending so that it counts from 1 to 15. And then I believe they do a partition by too. In this case, they're partitioning by company. So for every single company, it's gonna row number count descending on power, right? So you can see here Toyota counts 1, 2, 3, 4. Honda gets its own 1, 2, 3 count. We want to do the same thing, except we need to partition by the contract address and the token ID. So we're trying to get the order of transfers for every token ID on a contract address. And we're ordering by block number descending. And we also need to order by event index descending. And we're going to say this is last transfer. And why do we need both of these? It's possible that in a single block, a token was transferred multiple times. So we want the last event index, meaning the last time the transfer event was emitted in the block for this specific token ID and contract address. And I'm going to call this with last held as all of this here. So let's start with the next step, which is select all from last held, where last transfer is equal to 1, because the last transfer for a specific token ID and contract address is going to be 1, because we're counting from the last to the first time is transferred, basically. Now, this is going to be a lot of data, so let's filter this more. We only want transfers where 2 is to some address we're interested in. And in my case, I'm interested in Deeze's address. So I can just do this. And let's run this here. So essentially what this is doing is saying, all right, get me the last transfer for every single NFT out there, and then only keep the ones where the last transfer was to an address that I'm interested in. Note that I don't use any quotes or anything here because this is a byte array, and byte arrays are like a native type in Dune SQL, so you don't have to worry about, oh, is this case sensitive or not? I don't have to do a lower or anything. I just have to make sure I basically put it here without quotes, right? So this is the equivalent of me doing this. All right, so here I can see there's 4,796 NFTs that Deeze currently holds. And this is just the raw transfer data. You can see here there's a bunch of zeros, which is a mint, and we're going to get into that. And if I just wanted to check things to make sure that the data is what I want it to be, I can look for, let's see, he's only called the mint. And all of these are transfers to Deeze's address. All right. So it looks like he minted like 40 tokens here. So this is good as a start. But we want more metadata, and we want this to be more focused. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to say select all from last held user. I'm going to alias it. And first we want the token metadata. All right. So token metadata I can find just by searching tokens NFT. So this contains token metadata for NFTs across all blockchains. I just need to do a left join. It's not an inner join because there might be some NFTs we don't have metadata on. We're going to join on the contract address from the transfer event equals the contract address of the token. And I want where the blockchain is equal to chain, which is Ethereum in our case. And the metadata I want from here is I want the token symbol, I want the name, and I want the category, if it applies. And what's the other data we need? We want to have the transaction hash. We want to get the block number as the acquired block number. And we want to also keep the token ID from the transfer and the contract address from the transfer. So this is getting us closer, but what we want last is we want the value, and we want if it was gifted, minted, or bought. So to get these two columns, we need to do another join on transactions where we're matching the transaction hash to the transfer transaction hash. And because I want this to work for all chains, I'm going to replace this with chain, but this is equivalent of me typing Ethereum transactions. So for value, I can just take transaction value and divide it by 1e18 as acquisition value native. It's just an approximation, doesn't really apply when it's gifted, but at least for minted and bought, it's a good kind of easy approximation of, oh, they probably minted it for some amount of ETH or probably bought it for some amount of ETH. So for getting if it was gifted, minted, or bought, we're going to use a case when. So case when is basically an if statement. And I'm going to say case when transaction from is not equal to the address of the receiver, then that means that it was gifted. Because this is saying, okay, I wasn't the one who signed the transaction, but I'm still the one who got the token. That means someone else must have sent it to me. And we'll do another when the transfer from is equal to the null address. So we'll just do null address here. I'm going to copy this here. So if it's from the null address, and no, this is transfer from, this is not transaction from now. If the token was transferred from the 0 address, that means that it was minted. And you'll notice here, I don't do a check of, oh, if transaction from is equal to address or not, because case one evaluates like sequentially. So if it gets to here, then that means that this was already false. And else, if it wasn't gifted and it wasn't minted, then it has to have been bought. And I'm going to say this is bought, and I'm going to end this as acquired how. With this, we can run the query. And I need to delete this. I'm going to save this as NFT balances user address. So we have our results now, and I can filter by bot, for example, and get the highest acquisition value, and I can see there looks like there's a few art blocked curated NFTs that Deeze has bought. Again, remember this is just ETH. If he bought in something other than ETH, then it doesn't show up here. With that, you're done with the query of the week. As a bonus question, try and figure out if you can get a more accurate acquisition cost for bot methods. So to do this, you're going to want to leverage the nft.trades table, and you'll have to join on blockchain equals Ethereum, or chain in our case, and you're going to want to join on transaction hash as well, and you're also going to want to join on 2 other columns. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but I'm just going to say that it's possible that a trade in a hash trades multiple tokens. So you want to make sure that you only have one value per token bought. All right, so try to figure out what other columns you have to join on, and don't forget to submit or vote on a query for next week. The link is in the description below, and I will see you guys next time.